Sandy, I'd wait till about 6:33 or so, then you can get started. Hello, everyone. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. I want to welcome everyone tonight, this Motzei Shabbat, to the Riverdale Minions Annual Meeting. 2020 has been a challenging year for so many of us and in many different ways. In years past, I am sure there were some that may have felt that this meeting was more of an administrative exercise. But if 2020 has taught us anything, it has taught us how much we should appreciate and not take for granted any opportunity when we can be together with our families, friends, neighbors, and our community in a safe and healthy environment. We have a tremendous amount of gratitude and should continue to thank all of the frontline workers in our community, our doctors, nurses, paramedics, our emergency medical technicians, police, and firemen. We also thank the teachers in our community for educating our children and bringing some sense of normalcy to their days in a time where it's been anything but normal. A little closer to home here at TRM, we thank our rabbinic committee for all you have done for all of us, all the while managing your own personal and professional responsibilities throughout this pandemic and year. This year has had to make all of us think differently, operate differently, and pivot very quickly. And we thank all those that have volunteered and helped with the various programming, Daily Shabbat Minyanim, lectures and shiurim, and much, much more. And we thank all of you, our members, and appreciate everyone's understanding and patience. As I see a number of my friends that are frontline workers receive their vaccines, I am a little bit jealous as I and all of us wait for our turn. But at the same time, we should be very hopeful for a healthy and prosperous future. Now for the business at hand. I want to thank all those that submitted their proxies back to us electronically to ensure this annual meeting had an official quorum and for allowing this meeting to take place so that the shul can conduct the important and necessary business it needs to accomplish prior to the year coming to a close. With that in mind, let me quickly run through tonight's agenda. Rabbi Josh Wald will begin with a short Devar Torah. Following Rabbi Wald, Kevin Feinblum, a trustee of the shul and chair of the nominating committee, will lead us through the process for the election of certain members of the Board of Trustees as outlined in the annual meeting notice. Following Kevin, we will then hear from Rachel Wald, a trustee of the shul's treasurer, and a member of the executive committee who will present and discuss the shul's financial condition. Following Rachel's report, our shul president and shul trustee, Sandy Khan, will then address us with her thoughts and perspectives. I guess we can call it the State of the Shul Union Address. I do want to remind all of you that you can use the chat feature on the Zoom to ask questions throughout the meeting. I now want to close my remarks by wishing everyone on behalf of my family and the shul a very happy and healthy new year. And with that, Rabbi Josh Wald, the Zoom is now yours.
Thanks so much, Mark. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Good. Okay, Shavuot Tov, everyone. I hope you are all well. Well, we certainly have a long road ahead of us. News of the vaccine has been very positive, giving us some light at the end of this tunnel. And while our emotions have been all over the map, and this has been extremely difficult, I want to take a moment and reflect on two models and constructs of separation and isolation in the Torah that can perhaps speak to our situation and maybe give us some perspective, chizuk, and inner strength. The first, of course, as some of us has suggested, is the experience of the Metzora and the leper. The Metzora is sent out of the machaneh, the camp, or the city, so as not to allow the spread of tumah. And this, of course, is important in terms of the concern for health and the spiritual health of the community, a kind of sur meirah, turning away from the bad to alleviate the spread of tumah. And while there are some parallels, I would like to embrace another, perhaps more positive model to gain insight from, and that is the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol is asked to be mafresh, to separate for 7 days from family, friends, and community before he enters the Mikdash on Yom HaKippurim. What is the purpose of the Kohen Gadol separation? Rabbi Soloveitchik suggests that in order to understand this, you need to look at the source for what this law is based on. And the source is recorded as a machloket in Masechet Yuman, Daf Bet and Gimel. Rav Yochanan suggests the source for the Kohen Gadol's necessity to separate is based on the Miluim, the dedication of the Mishkan. Aaron needed to prepare for the Avodah for 7 days before he could actually enter the Kodesh Kodashim and put the Mishkan into full operation. Similarly, the Kohen Gadol has much to learn and prepare before Yom Kippur in order to do his complex job properly. Reish Lakish, on the other hand, says the source is based on the separation and preparation that the Jewish people did at Har Sinai before the reception of the Torah. Just as there was a hafrashah, a separation before Matan Torah, in order for the Jewish people to orient themselves for that awesome day, so too there needs to be a separation by the Kohen before entering the Kodesh Kodashim, so he can properly orient himself for the enormity of the day. And as difficult as this time has been for many of us, perhaps we can use the Kohen Gadol as a model to orient and prepare ourselves as to why community is so important to us and what a shul could be, so that when we re-enter, hopefully soon, it can be an even more special and meaningful place. During this time, there have been a lot of wonderful and creative people that I will not name now because there have been many who have led the shul through these difficult times, both with logistics and with programming. And while things may have looked different this year, it has certainly taught us so much about what a little creativity and care can do. And it has certainly laid the groundwork for a very bright future for our community and our shul. Thank you very much, everybody. Wishing you all well. Shavua Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi Wold, and Shavua Tov to everybody. On behalf of the nominating committee, I would like to thank our outgoing trustees and then introduce our new nominees. As you all know, we have 3 people stepping off the Board of Trustees this year. Firstly, a huge thank you to Peter Collefson, who is chairman of the Board of Trustees and leader of our strategic planning committee, Peter brought tremendous experience and guidance to the board, and he will certainly be sorely missed. As you all know, Peter and Beth are in Israel, and we wish them all the best. Edith Boehm has been a very active board member and devoted significant time to the Chesed Committee of TRM. We thank Edith for her time on the board and thank her in advance for her continuing work on the Chesed Committee and her continuing work in helping our communities most needy. Finally, to our regret, Dan Bloom moved out of our community to New Jersey earlier this year. As many of you may not know, Dan devoted an extraordinary amount of time to security-related matters at the shul, including helping us found our CSS Community Security Service effort. And he also helped steward our application for security-related funds through a Homeland Security grant process. We did in fact receive that grant, but unfortunately received it very close to COVID and its subsequent events. And so we look forward to seeing those funds affecting positively our security when we hopefully all get back together in the sanctuary. Turning now to our new nominees, in selecting nominees to replace our outgoing trustees, the nominating committee gave great weight to committee involvement by our respective members. And as you'll hear in a few moments, our new nominees have each devoted significant time to committee work at TRM. We thank them for what they've done, for agreeing to serve us as trustees going forward, and for their continuing investment of time in TRM and commitments to our community. Firstly, Eliza Koenig has been extraordinarily active on the programming committee in the past year, and especially during COVID. To Rabbi Wold's remarks, there was an enormous amount of terrific programming that took place, and Eliza had a hand in much of it. We certainly appreciate all of her efforts and look forward to her joining the Board of Trustees and continuing her work on the programming committee. Josh Sudris, as many of you likely do not know, invested a significant amount of time in the seating committee for the Yamim Noraim. And I'm not sure there is a more thankless task among all the committee work that we have, but Josh did it with a smile, and I think we all were the tremendous beneficiaries of a very successful Yamim Noraim, and the seating work was fantastic. So thank you, Josh, for getting that done so well. We look forward to your efforts on the Board of Trustees and to working with you. Finally, Debbie Camioner, who many of you know has been a longtime member of TRM, is currently serving on the Rabbinic Search Committee and recently joined the Strategic Planning Committee as well. We certainly thank Debbie for her time invested in that, and we look forward to working with her as a trustee going forward. Based on the receipt of the proxy forms that many of you, in fact, I think most of you were kind enough to send in, our three new trustees have in fact been elected. We thank them in advance for their commitment of time and look forward to working with them. I'm now going to open the floor up to questions and would request that to the extent you have a question, if you could please type it through the chat function. There's a chat button at the bottom of your window, and Yardena has agreed to read out the questions, and then we will do our best to answer them. We'll also have questions at the end, so if people would like to save their questions, we can save them for the end.
All right, there don't seem to be any questions, so Rachel will hand it over to you.
Great, thanks. It's so nice to see everyone tonight. Hold on a second while we work through some technical difficulties. Can you close your computer? Okay. Let's try this again. Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. The complexities of having two speakers in one room. I'm just going to give you a short update regarding the finances from last year and looking forward to 2021. So looking back at 2020, our total revenue is down from what we originally budgeted, but our expenses were also less than what we had budgeted. Most notably, we have savings from the reduction in our staff costs, as we know, Rabbi Margulies left in the middle of the year, and also the negotiated rent reductions that we had due to COVID. And these were able to more than offset the decrease in revenue. Our original budget called for a net surplus of $4,000, and we're ending the year with a surplus of about $30,000, which we consider to be really successful given the circumstances this year. Looking ahead to 2021, the largest contributor to revenue is expected to be membership dues. We're anticipating that about 43% of revenue will be generated from membership, which is pretty close to where our actual revenue numbers were in 2020, which were 45%. The majority of the remaining revenue is expected to come from other donations to TRM, 26% of which is projected to come from the Coleridge appeal, and another 26% from general donations of our very generous members of our shul. With regards to expenses, about 2/3 of our expense budget is our rent, which I would like to remind you includes all overhead: heat, water, janitorial staff, security, etc. The other expense categories that are noteworthy are staff costs, which are budgeted at 15% of total expenses, and shul programming, which is budgeted at 6% of total expenses. With regards to our staff costs, and I believe that Sandy will touch on this, so I'm not going to go into it further, but I wanted to note that we have included in our budget for 2021 2 part-time staff positions, both a rabbi and a youth director. That's all I have in terms of the details. I'm sure that, I think we'll just save questions until the end unless someone has any very specific question right now. So I'll hand it back to whomever's next.
Can't hear you.
Hang on, Sandy, you're muted for some reason. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, everybody. Good evening, everyone, and Shavua Tov. The annual meeting is always a good time to take stock and reflect on the year past and to outline plans for the coming year. To me, at last, this year has been a study of contrasts, vivid in some ways and muted in many others. The vivid has been all about what we have accomplished despite the pandemic, and the muted has been about our loss. This past year has been painful and trying for all of us as individuals and for us as a shul. We all have an overarching sense of loss as we miss our simple daily routines as well as our larger communal activities. We think of all the times davening b'tzibur didn't take place, the funerals and shivas which didn't allow us to offer comfort in person, the weddings at which we could not dance, and the bar and bat mitzvahs we couldn't celebrate together as the next generation came of age. So how do we define TRM without the centrality of our synagogue for the vast majority of our members? Our community found a different way to come together, differently, but no less profoundly, to mitigate the sorrow during this period. We're all proud of the communal chesed in the darkest days of March, April, and May. We began by bringing food to the families who were quarantined and games and activities for the children who needed to stay indoors for 2 weeks. We delivered pizza to thank the healthcare workers at Montefiore who risked their lives to protect us. We established phone trees to check in with our members, let them know they were not alone, and to see if we could help in some way. We raised and distributed tzedakah for people whose lives were adversely affected by COVID-19. We learned Torah through numerous online shiurim, listened to scholars and residents, and enjoyed weekly video divrei Torah. When it was deemed safe to do so, we davened outdoors to safeguard everyone's health. The ability to gather together for the Yom Noram was an inspirational time for all of us. In particular, having 2 tents for Yom Kippur, which allowed everyone to come together at one time. For so many people, it was the first time they were able to see and to daven together with fellow TRM members. And I was gratified by how many people commented how it felt particularly meaningful, life lived vividly. These actions are but a manifestation of the myriad of loving details that bind us together as a community and as a shul. These actions cannot replace what we lost, but can bring some comfort or joy in a moment of darkness as we appreciate what we have been able to achieve as a community under trying circumstances. It's important to mention that all of these things were accomplished through the hard work, dedication, and determination of our volunteers. There is literally not one program, not one email, phone call, program, daily minyan, davening, shir, devar Torah, chesed activity, security issue, bulletin, or youth program, which does not require a volunteer to take action and to dedicate his or her time. Therefore, I am asking each and every one of you to consider what skills or what time you can donate to our community, in particular now, when we are all spending a great deal more time at home. To be a lay-led congregation means each and every one of us has a responsibility to contribute. We have no staff to allow us to simply be consumers. This past year also saw other changes as we said goodbye to Rabbi Dan Margulies and his family. We're blessed as a community that we have so many remarkably talented members who are willing and able to step in while we work to fill the rabbinical position. I want to thank our interim rabbinical team, Rabbis Josh Wall, Jeff Cobran, and Dr. Isaac Chevelle. Their work has been a labor of love and a source of wisdom from which we have all benefited. I encourage everyone to reach out at any time to any one of the 3 of them to discuss matters of concern. They stand at the ready to help. At the same time, and despite the pandemic, the Rabbinic Search Committee, which Eitan Bentheim is chairing, has begun its work and has already interviewed several candidates with a variety of experience and backgrounds. The process is ongoing, and we will of course keep the membership apprised of our progress while also respecting the confidential nature of any job search. The search committee and board are in agreement that we should take the time to ensure that the rabbi we hire is the best possible fit and not rush the process. During the course of the year, we had some firsts in TRM history as well. We enjoyed a hugely successful dinner, the first in our 5 years. The dinner to me represented the best of TRM, a festive, upbeat, creative evening enjoyed by a large intergenerational group of attendees, which was affordable for all. We also created a thought-provoking TRM community Haggadah, asking us all to consider how the pandemic informed our view of the text and themes of the Pesach Seder. It is emblematic of our DNA as a shul, asking us thought-provoking questions which require reflection. Beginning a short while ago, we began offering a parent Parsha video, beautifully and intelligently created by Dr. Sarah Rohr Bentheim. These videos offer both thoughtful and fun ways to engage children in the weekly Parsha. Over the last few weeks, we were also the beneficiaries of 2 new initiatives. Dr. Isaac Chevelle has begun a weekly Wednesday morning Zoom shir on Jewish texts. And a week ago, we were privileged to hear from Deputy Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs from Japan on an overview of US and Japanese relations. It was an intellectually stimulating and engaging evening put together by Harriet Mandel, whom we thank. Be on the lookout for additional trips abroad, all possible without getting on an airplane. During Hanukkah, people of all ages enjoyed watching as Joy Wilson taught us the latest craze and created chocolate bombs. In tribute to this creative programming that was such a hit, we had attendees literally from all over the tri-state area. Notwithstanding the uncertainty that lies ahead, I am singularly proud the way in which our community has held closely together, caring for one another. The administration and board has been active on a daily basis, working towards our future. In that regard, our strategic planning committee, ably chaired now by Kevin Feinblum, has just recently begun to map out a strategic plan for our shul post-COVID. It is a long-term project to thoughtfully consider what TRM should establish as its goals for the next several years. We have recently restarted our youth committee, which will work on the hiring of a youth director who can take a more hands-on role in developing a program for all youth age groups. I'm also pleased to report that TRM has been the recipient of a $100,000 federal grant from Homeland Security. This grant is the result of the hard work of Dan Bloom, who began the process, and Jeff Merdler and Brad Herkman, who completed the laborious paperwork. We will be using the grant over the next 6 to 12 months to enhance our security with bollards at TRM entrance, door alarms, new locks, hardware, and additional cameras and TV monitors so we can see all the entrances. And we will also be using some of the funds for security training. If you have any security questions or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to Jeff or Brad. Rachel Wald gave our financial report, and I'm sure we're all glad to learn that the shul is on firm financial footing as we were able to reduce our expenses in line with reduced revenues. As a result, the board has determined that the annual dues for membership will remain the same as last year, namely $1,600 for family members and $800 for singles. I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize the members of the board with whom I work often on a daily basis. It is a singularly talented, thoughtful, and dedicated group of leaders whom I feel privileged to engage with. I also want to thank Edith Bain, who has served the community with distinction and who's now stepping down from the board. I am sure everyone joins me in thanking her for her service, both as a board member and as a member of the Chesed Committee, which, as you heard from Kevin, and I'm happy to confirm, she will continue. Edith's wisdom and thoughtful input will really be missed. I thank all of our members for sharing our vision and community, and I think I speak for all of us when I express hope and confidence for a better year ahead. And I'm happy to take questions if there aren't any. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Sandy, first question is from Rachel Chafetz. Has the board approached the temple regarding the ventilation in our space so that we can daven more safely?
Yes, so that was a discussion we had months and months ago with the temple, and they have gone through and had their ventilation system cleaned and HEPA filters installed. So that was addressed, I don't remember, probably over the summer.
Tina Lerner asked, did we get a rent reduction from the temple? How long will it last?
We did. The temple has really shown itself to be wonderful partners with us, and they reduced the rent beginning in March, and that is continuing at least for now.
Beth Applebaum wants to know, was it a HEPA 13 or 16 filter?
I don't recall, but I will find out and let you know.
Any other questions? Oh, yes. Alyssa Karp, is the Homeland Security grant granted to TRM or TRM and the temple?
No, this was our application, and it is for our particular use. And we have hired a consultant who's been working with us, and I believe also working with the temple, so that we're each spending money in a strategic fashion, which could benefit both congregations.
Jeff Merdler just wrote in, the temple has obtained a separate grant. The 100K grant is only ours. Thank you. Any other, last call, any other questions? So 30K surplus excludes the 100K, yes.
Yes, absolutely. The $100,000 was just granted to us, and it is only for the use for the security items. It cannot go into our general budget. We have to document and show the government everything that we spend. So it's entirely for security. It cannot be used for general purposes.
Can somebody share some details?
Not sure.
Sorry, again, the question was sharing some details about the davening downstairs. Beth, if you could type in, I would assume that means a little bit more about the spacing and how exactly that's working. Layout and spacing.
Yeah, so the spacing has obviously been socially distanced. We're using the space downstairs. The doors in the back are open, and the windows in the back by the play area have also been open to allow for additional ventilation.
As well, I just want to add also the outside doors of the parking lot are open as well. And there is sometimes, I'm not sure, and the doors in the kiddish area. And Brad, can you just type in where there, I know sometimes there's a tent set up for people who want to be outside even when the Minions meeting indoors. But as he does that, I'll go to the next question, which is, can you share some more information about the youth director that was mentioned earlier?
Well, we're actively engaged in looking for a youth director. We have not yet hired one.
And I'll just add a little plug. If anybody knows anyone, please feel free to forward their name and information to me. These positions are actually harder to fill than you would imagine. So we would appreciate any recommendations. Just to circle back to the layout of the shul, Brad just wanted to mention that whenever there's precipitation, so if it's raining and they're meeting outside or it's expected, they set a tent up outside of the windows in the back. Yes, women and men can be in that tent together. I mean, separate but together. Sorry. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you one and all for attending this evening. Shavua Tov.
If anyone wants to say hi to each other, I unmuted. You can say hi to each other and just Shavua Tov, everybody.
We're still here and alive.